Hello, my name is Gordon Schlosser, and today we're going to be talking about some live mix techniques that you can use to mic a cajon, which is a small box drum that can be used in an acoustic worship set. We'll be talking about the mics I'll be using, mic placement, and then we'll come back to the board and we'll talk about setting your head amp, EQ, your gate, and some compression, as well as some effects that you can throw on to make the sound of the cajon really pop in the room. So without further ado, let's get started. So for today's purposes, I will be giving you an example of a two-mic miking technique on this cajon. For the back, going into the sound hole, we'll be using an Audix D6 to capture more of that low end and the woof of the cajon. And for the front, I will be using a Shure SM57, and the purpose of this mic is to catch more of the attack and the noise as the hand hits the front of the cajon. Alright, so the first part that we got here is we're going to start at the back of the cajon. I've got my short mic stand here as well as my D6. We're just going to clip that on, and what we want to do is make sure that the stand is nice and tight, and then we're going to take and we're going to insert it right into the hole, slightly in, and then that's ready to go as far as being patched in to the soundboard. Alright, so here we are at the front of the cajon. Here's where it gets a little more tricky, because although we want the stand to be in an adequate place to catch the sound coming off of the hands of the player, we want to make sure that it's out of the way enough so it doesn't affect the player's ability to adequately play the instrument. So for this, I'm going to kind of place it like so, catty-cornered, so that way her feet don't get in the way. And then I've got my dynamic SM57 here. So we're going to clip that there, and then just kind of angling it in to where the pattern of this mic will kind of catch more of this general area of the cajon to catch when our hand hits this area again. So now that we've placed all the mics, it's time to patch everything, run it into the system. So for this, we'll be using just kind of a standard XLR cable, and what you want to do is keep it clean, because we want to be able to make sure that the cables don't get tangled. So for this, we're going to take our coil and we're going to plug in to the system, and we're going to leave the coil wrapped at the base bottom of the stand, and we're going to come up and around and then plug into the microphone. Now this is to ensure that everything stays clean, as well as that if we have a problem with the cable, that we can trace it back and we don't have to deal with a mess in the back by the rest of the channels. Also, we're going to do the same thing for this back microphone, and then we should be good. Also take note, we want to take note of which channel we plug things into, so that when we go back to the board, we'll be able to easily identify where the signal should be coming from. So now that we have everything patched into the selected channels and we've run the cables cleanly, it's time to go back to the board and start getting some sound. So now that we've talked about mics and mic placement, now it's time to come behind the board and talk about head amp, EQ, compression, and a gate, as well as some effects. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to do is set the head amp so that way we can hear the signal that's coming through the microphones. So we're going to start with the back microphone that I have ran, and so we're going to open up the head amp, and we're going to have the cajon player go ahead and start playing. Alright. So now that we have the head amp set and we're feeling pretty good about the sound and the signal and the amount of it that's coming through the system, now we're going to move on to the EQ. The first thing to make sure is that the EQ is flat and turned on. Go for it. So the next step that we're going to talk about, now that we've set our EQ for one of the microphones, is we're going to switch over now and look at compression and getting this mic to sound just a little bit better than it does now. So now that we've set the EQ and added some compression to the back mic, we're going to move on to the front mic and do the same process, and then we will blend the two together. So now that I've set the head amp, EQ, gain, as well as set compression on both of the mics. Now it's time to have the cajonist play and combine both the microphones to get the sound that we are looking for. So now that we have the channel EQ'd and mixed and sounding like we want to, we're going to add some effects to each channel to really start to fill out the space of the room. So we're going to add a little bit of verb to the mics. Well, that's pretty much it. I hope you find this video helpful, and thank you so much for watching.